In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of American Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King. Tonight, we're going to start our show with a Black history reflection of Miss Katherine Johnson. There's a particular kind of genius that does not announce itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, pencil in hand, double-checking numbers that no one else dared to question, numbers that would determine whether a human being lived or died, soared or burned, reached the moon, or never came home. That genius had a name. It wore a dress and carried a briefcase, and for too long, the world did not say her name loudly enough. Tonight we say it, Katherine Johnson. Born on August 26, 1918, in a small town of White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, Katherine Coleman Goebel Johnson arrived in a world that had already decided not be. She was Black, she was a girl, and according to the segregated, limited imagination of mid-century America, that was supposed to be enough to define her ceiling. It was not. Katherine was a child prodigy in the truest sense. By the time most children are learning long division, she had already outpaced her grade level by years. She enrolled in high school at the age of 10. She graduated at 14. By 18, she walked across the stage at West Virginia State College, not once, but twice, earning degrees in both mathematics and French. Her professors did not merely pass her through. They created graduate courses specifically for her because she had already mastered everything the curriculum offered. She was not just exceptional, she was generationally rare. In 1953, Katherine joined the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, which would later become NASA. She was assigned to Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, as a human computer, one of a group of Black women mathematicians who calculated flight data by hand with the precision that machines of the era could not always match. The work was meticulous, demanding, and life-critical. Katherine did not merely meet the standard, she redefined it. In May of 1961, when astronaut Alan Shepard made history as the first American to travel to space aboard Freedom 7, Katherine Johnson's calculations were the mathematical architecture beneath that mission. She worked the numbers, she verified the trajectory, she made it possible, and a year later, when John Glenn prepared to become the first American to orbit the Earth aboard Friendship 7, NASA had already installed IBM electronic computers to handle the orbital calculations. Glenn, a man about to circle the globe at 17,500 miles per hour, trusted the machine, but he trusted Katherine Johnson more. He personally refused to board the spacecraft until she had reviewed and verified every figure, that her contributions did not stop there. But the computer had produced his words, now etched in history. Her contributions did not stop there. Katherine Johnson calculated her trajectory for the Apollo 11 mission, the mission that placed human footprints on the surface of the moon in July of '69. And when Apollo 13 suffered a catastrophic explosion in 1970, turning a lunar landing into a desperate survival mission, it was Catherine's backup navigation charts prepared in advance, precisely and methodically, that helped guide those 3 astronauts safely back to Earth. She co-authored 13 research reports over 33 years career at NASA, 33 years, 13 reports, countless lives touched by the quiet, brilliant work of her hand. The recognition she deserved came at last. In her final chapter in 2015, President Barack Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. In 2016, the world met her story through Taraji P. Henson's powerful portrayal in the film Hidden Figures. In 2017, NASA named the Katherine G. Johnson Computational Research Facility at Langley in her honor. And in 2019, the United States Congress awarded her the Congressional Gold Medal. She passed from this earth on February 24th, 2020, at the age of 101 years old, having lived long enough to see the world finally, fully acknowledge what she had always known about herself. Tonight, as we celebrate a woman who is dedicated to preparing the next generation of young minds for the world that awaits them, let the story of Katherine Johnson be our North Star. She teaches us that precision matters, that preparation is not optional, it is everything. That a Black woman's mind is not a secondary instrument, it is the very compass by which history navigates. Odette Flemming walks that tradition, building the human computers of tomorrow, one student, one test score, one scholarship, one life at a time. Katherine Johnson reached the stars. The young people Odette Flemming prepares are reaching for them too. And tonight we celebrate them both. Let me introduce our guest tonight. If you're tuned in right now, whether you caught us live, whether you found this later in the week, whether somebody shared this episode and told you you need to watch this, you are exactly where you're supposed to be tonight. This is America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles Zachary King, and tonight, we are in season 4, episode 71, May 12th, 6 o'clock Eastern, and I need you to understand, this episode is not an accident. There are no accidents on this show. We are in a season in life and on this program where the conversation around our children, our young people, and their futures has never been more urgent. We're living in a time when the decisions made in classrooms, at kitchen tables, in guidance counselors' offices, on an SAT testing mornings can echo for decades. The difference between a scholarship and student loan debt, the difference between a seat at the table and watching from outside the window, the difference between a young person who knows their worth and one who has been convinced by systems, by silence, by statistics that they do not belong. Tonight's episode sits at an intersection of 3 powerful pillars: education, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about what it means to believe in young people when the world hasn't decided to yet. We're going to talk about the courage it takes to build something from a conviction, to look at a gap in the system and say, I will fill it. We're going to talk about what happens when academic coaching, life coaching, and a genuine, relentless love for young people collide in the hands of someone who has made it her life's mission. Our guest tonight turned her passion into a platform and her platform into a movement. She did not wait for someone to build the table she needed. She went and built it herself in Atlanta, in the middle of a world that told teenagers, what they could not do. And she said, not in my house. She has helped students earn over $2.8 million in scholarships. She has coached young people through self-doubt, through standardized tests, through the moments when the weight of who you are supposed to become feels like more than you can carry. She is a founder, a CEO, a life coach, and an educational consultant, a private educator, and tonight she is our guest. Fasten in, this is going to be one of the archives. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute honor to welcome to America in Black and White, Miss Odette Flemming.
I can stand up to such a wonderfully amazing introduction. I thank you for that. And to be placed in the same space as my wonderful soror, Ms. Katherine Johnson, is just beyond me. So I appreciate you and thank you so much for having me.
Well, before we get into the show, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience?
Well, I mean, in these days and times, what I would love to say to our audience is to always keep your head to the sky. That was a song when I was growing up, and we can at this time be moved into a space where we feel like we either have to be on guard, we have to be in fight mode, but we need to keep our heads to the sky, look up to the hills from whence cometh our help, because that's where the ideas come from. That's where the strategy comes from. And that's where our strength comes from. So as a people, we need to right now stand firm, but keep our eyes to the sky.
Well, I thank you for that. And that's definitely some words of wisdom, encouragement, and encouragement that I hope people take heed to. Let's start with where I like for people to get the opportunity to know a little bit about our guests before we get into the wonderful things that they do. Can you take us back to the beginning? Where did you grow up and what was the environment like that shaped you, who you are today?
Okay, that's a wonderful, interesting time to talk about it in the times that we're in, because I am actually an immigrant. I was not born in the United States. I was born in the wonderful island of Jamaica. So I moved to the US when I was little, but still I was born there and raised in the streets of Brooklyn. I say that it's a collision of cultures, because even though I was raised in Brooklyn, my surrounding community was all Jamaican. So I might as well have been raised in Jamaica, because on Saturdays we went to go to the bakery and wait for hardo bread and get some patties to take home. I grew up eating, chicken soup and curry goat and all the things that we are, used to on special occasions. We had our saltfish and ackee and all of that. So I was crafted by the willfulness of two people who decided to move to a country that they didn't know. My parents were anchors. So for people who don't know what that means, in an immigration sense, an anchor is the first of the lineage that emigrates to a place. And then as a result, almost all of the siblings ended up here. So they were sponsored and all the things. And so, so everybody came. So.
Well, we've got a couple of comments here. I guess these are people that are probably following you. This young lady, Kayla Mazar, she says hello. It's on the screen.
Oh, well, hi.
And she says, you are the best.
Oh, well, thank you.
And this is from Nohaba. It says, sup, OG.
Okay, I'll take all of the love, because I probably need it to get myself juiced up and ready to go. But I feel like I'm ready right now to really communicate what we as a people need to get up and moving and going so that the next generation can flourish ahead of us, as it should be, so we can return to the way it should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so, who was the first person in your life who made you believe that education was truly your path forward? And what did they say or do that stayed with you?
Interesting. That's a great question because no one ever really encouraged me in that way. So my mom and my dad completely strict with the education. So as a result, two of my dad's four kids were my sister and I, and we maintained straight A's in all of our subjects throughout all of our elementary, junior high school, and of course, high school is a little more social, but um, as a result, my mom always read to us. She, always made us learn our work. Our books were the most important thing. However, my mom never encouraged me to be a teacher. So there was a time that I did want to be a teacher, and my mom said, teachers don't make enough money. And I was little when she said it. She said, teachers don't make enough money and children are too disrespectful. And this was in probably the 70s. so,
Oh, wow.
so I wasn't really encouraged to be an educator. However, I was given the passion for learning. And as a result of having that passion for learning, and I was blessed with a very curious mind. So always asking questions, always having a retort, always trying to get the last word, all those things. And so as a result, when you get full of things, it's like it has to come out. So the coming out is just being able to share it with other people. So, yeah.
So with your curiosity, what burned your fury, or put the fuel to your fire that made you want to get into education?
So education for me was something that had kind of meandered throughout my life. If the people look and they say there's a thread, it was threaded through everything that I did. So as I said, initially I was the educated, I was the receiver, I was a very good student. I loved to listen, I loved to read, all of those things. And then as I got older, I had a passion for service. So it started in church, and from we had a pastor who was he was a chaplain from the military, and so he worked with the youth group, and he always drilled into us how important service was. So when I went to college and pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha, then at that time, the service of the organization was the most important thing for me. So in service, actually, even before then, when I was in high school, I was in an organization called Council for Unity. And our role was basically what DEI looks like today. Our founder, Robert DeSena, he was my English teacher, and he had a group of us. It was the 70s, and we worked or went to school rather in an area where there were all these different communities of people, right? So we had the Chinese gangs and the Black gangs and the Hispanic gangs and whatever. So his dream was to have us all unite. And so he founded an organization. It's like 50 years old now. We still talk on Facebook and all the things. And so back then, our whole goal was sharing cultures among each other. So to me, that inspired service. And so as part of my service, I tutored. I used to tutor on the Upper West Side. I started a tutoring program at the Boys and Girls Club when I was in college. And so all of these things always come back around to education. When I was in school, I went to a PWI, and we started something where on Black Solidarity Day, which I don't know if anybody remembers that. I feel like it's like a figment because no one remembers Black Solidarity Day, but we used to do you remember it? I see you nodding. Okay, somebody, yes, because whenever I say that, people are always like, no, I've never heard of that before. So Black Solidarity Day, we started, because this was around the apartheid time. We were doing the whole divestiture from South African industries, and so on it's not Black History Month, on Black Solidarity Day, we started doing teach-ins. So instead of going to class, we would go to the chapel and we would invite local community activists and national, really, to come and speak to us. So we learned from people like John Henrik Clark. We learned from people like Dr. Leonard Jeffries. It was an amazing time. So anyway, my point is I love to learn and I love to teach. So it's just kind of a golden thread in there, no matter what I'm doing.
So, were you the student who loved school, or did you have to learn to love learning? And how did that relationship with education develop for you?
So I was the kid who I'm a nerd by nature. I'm a grown woman. I'm still a Trekkie. I still love Star Wars. I'm a, I am a natural born and very happy nerd. I love to just, my brain loves to absorb information. And people a lot of times are like, how do you know that? That's not even your field. I don't know. I think I read because I read all the time. So my relationship with education has always been positive. And if it wasn't actually showing up as positive in my world because I was actually exploring my social side, then I still had that fear of God where it's like, oh my goodness, if my mom sees my grades. So I always still had to get it together. So understanding that education was going to be the way forward. My father had a fourth grade education. So, you know, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. So, you know, that was a lot. My sister's, and she's a chiropractor. She overdid it. She went and she's got 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree, and she's a doctor of chiropractic. So,
Oh,
so
wow.
she made up for all the folks who didn't get a degree.
Well, you know, I mean, I think that's amazing. You know that you know you and your sister, you know, you took the bull by the horns, and
Mhm.
you decided that you guys were going to do what you were going to do. You
Right.
know, with younger Odette, what was younger Odette planning to do for the rest of her life?
Sure. Okay. So before I just let me correct you just a little bit. There was actually 4 of us. You're
Oh,
right. So my sister and I were of my parents' union. I have
okay.
a brother as well and an oldest sister. So I do. So there's more of us from my father's side. It was just my sister and I were the most together in terms of being in the household. So but what did I want to do? So by the time I got to high school, we're going to jump forward. By the time I got to high school, I recognized that I was an amazing writer. And I wanted to write. And I also discovered that I loved photography. So well, yes, there's that. And at what so let's just take one step back. So my mom almost convinced me to be a doctor. Almost. And then I joined this organization called HOSA, which still exists today, Health Occupation Students of America. And in HOSA, you had to like do all the medical stuff. So I was, you know, rocking and rolling after school. I'm taking blood. I'm, you know, doing your, you know, putting on the pressure cuff, doing all the things. And then one day they decide that they're going to show us a video. It was not good. One was like a traumatic surgery in an ER, and the other one was like a bed sore. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm finished. That's fine. I'm good. Health is so important to me, but me being the dispenser of the health is just not necessarily my thing. So I moved on. So I love psychology, right? And I wanted to be an adolescent psychologist, which is why it's so amazing that I came back around to being an life coach, an academic life coach, because I work with the same population of young people. But yes, so I wanted to be a photojournalist, and I went to college actually for photojournalism, and then changed my major, as we all do when we get to college. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's
So, so what subject or experience in your early academic life first made you feel genuinely powerful, like your mind was your greatest gift?
ooh. So when I was in the fourth grade, I want to say. So I was the nerd, which of course the nerd was not the popular kid. so so I was really quiet. I didn't really have a lot of friends when in elementary school. I didn't really say too much. I had like two friends, we whatever. And that was kind of my growing up. And then Jamaicans, they're like, you don't go to school for friends, you go to school to learn. So they were unbothered by the fact that I didn't really have any friends. So I won. There was a magazine, I think it's still out. It's called Highlights, the Highlights magazine from Scholastic Reader. And
Yeah, I
so
remember that. I don't know if they're still out though.
I don't know, but I won a poetry writing contest, and they published my poem in Highlights magazine, and they, the school was all aglow, like, oh, one of our students won the blah blah, and so that impacted me definitely. So I guess had to stand up in front of the class, and they had to listen to me while I read my poem, although they could care less, but I think that would probably be the first time that I was like, oh, my words can make people pay attention. So, yeah.
So, was there a teacher, a coach, a mentor who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself? Tell us about that person and that moment.
Oh, okay. So if I go to elementary school, I will say Mrs. Isaacs, who was my fifth grade teacher. She always inspired me to kind of come out of my shell, because I was that kid who was really, really smart, but really, really quiet. And so she would always try and get me to do more of my, whatever, do more of whatever we were doing in school. Back then, like, music was a big thing in schools, and we all played instruments and did chorus and like all those things. And so she was always trying to push me to the front, and giving me accolades and stuff to try and get me out of my shell. And then I would say from there, it is definitively Robert DeSena, who is he was my English teacher in the 10th grade, and he's the founder of Council for Unity. And he is the one who, if I say this story properly, I will say that he's the one who inspired me to be the type of educator that I am today, because he was so against the mold of what teachers were, I think, at that time. He loved us. He taught us like mythology and psychology, and taught us how to see ourselves differently, to see each other differently. And we're still, our John Dewey, our John Dewey cohort, I guess is I'll say from the 80s. We're still in touch with each other, and we still call each other's brothers and sisters to this day. And so he would be the person who inspired me to want to make the type of difference in a child's life that he made in mine.
Oh, wow. So, when you were a teenager, were there any moments of self-doubt that you had to work through, and how did you navigate those moments?
Oh, lots. I mean, it's any teenager that can run the gauntlet of teendom and not have doubts is like, they should just, ascend, because that's impossible, right? Because that's that time of life when we are figuring ourselves out, figuring out how we fit into the world, how we fit into our family, but then not wanting to fit into our family and wanting to express ourselves. So just that whole adolescent, teen, young adult period is just anarchy. So yeah, I was definitely having doubt, and being able to have people in my life that I could talk to was critical for me. Whether it was D, who's my teacher, or being able to talk to my best friends. One of my best friends from back in the day, since the 80s. We've been best friends since like 82. And so talking to her, I've always had a very tiny, close-knit group of friends, and being able to reach out to any one of them has been a help for me.
Wow. So, growing up, did you have access to the kind of academic support, coaching, or mentorship that you now provide to students? And how does that inform your work?
I did not. And I would say that the world has changed a lot. So the need for it was different, or the need to have it or not have it When I was going to school, when I was going to college, it was the 80s, right? So I didn't really, it's like you did the SAT, but it wasn't like now at all, right? It wasn't, nobody was sitting there like, oh my gosh, if I don't get a 1600, someone's gonna kill me. Oh my, no, it's like, you go in, you take the test. So I asked my parents, if I could get test prep, which was really forward thinking, considering that it was like 1984 or whatever. And they were like, absolutely not. How much is that? Oh no, go get the book, right? so I did not have test prep, and I was like a middle of the road SAT person, like folks that tutor, and they're like, oh, I got 100% on the SAT. I take it every year. Yeah, that's not, I don't really do that. So I'm more of the, I didn't get 100 on the SAT. And so as a result, let me show you how you can. Because when I went to school, we interviewed with people, right? So, I mean, I don't know, what year, I don't know if you're like in my zone of college years, but like in the 80s, like you got a letter and they told you to come up to the school. So that's what I did. I got my letter. I went to the school. I sat across from the dean. He talked to me. He asked me questions. He asked me to explain things on my transcript. What did I want to do with my life? All of that. And then he sent me on my way. A couple of weeks later, I get a letter. Welcome. That's how college was when I was going to school. What's going on now to me is I feel a little bit of mania. And if we can, I don't know if we can pivot, but one of the things that I would say is that kids today have to struggle with so much more because everything becomes a function of money, right? So, education today, the reason why kids can't read, the reason why kids can't do math is because people are awarding monetary, not to the kids, but they're awarding these contracts, right? People want to get a contract with a district. That's what everybody wants to do. Oh, I want to get a new contract with the district, or the district has to pay $75,000 a year to have access to this software, or what. The software is not helping, right? The software is not doing what the software needs to do. The kids aren't learning. And so as a result, tuition is up exponentially. Student debt. I mean, let's just talk about what student debt looks like as a result. So there is a need for an entire reframing of the education system. And for as much as everyone's trying to go forward, I'm that person that's trying to go forward by going back. Let's take it back to what it used to be, some good old repetition, some good old rote learning, some good things that help make kids confident. It's like confidence comes from competence. Confident children are born from being competent at what they do. If they never feel like what they're doing is right, then they will never have the confidence to keep doing the work. And so that's not all kids, you know what I mean? But I do recognize, I could go on. So I'm sorry, go ahead, hit me with another question, because I could on the bandwagon and just keep going.
You're good, actually, because I mean that's really good information that I think that a lot of parents should probably take into the memory bank and just start thinking about that from a critical perspective as to what's going to best benefit their kids, especially getting ready for college. Right. Because when you talked about student loan debt, student loan debt now, the total amount of that is more than $1 trillion.
Absolutely. And that's after they excused all of that debt last year, or whatever year, in the late Biden years. So so absolutely the student debt is still crippling, and there's less mercy now. Right? They're just like, oh, we don't care. They're just like, we're going to let the Department of Treasury take your money and from wherever you're getting it. So my mom used to always say, so both of my parents are deceased. God rest their souls. My dad just passed away like 2 months ago. And my mom used to always say, these people act like they gave me money to put down somewhere. And so, like the Jamaican translation basically is, you're acting like you handed me $10 and told me to hold it for you, because you're coming up asking for the $10 like you know where it's coming from. so, yeah, yes, it's a lot.
So let's transition over to your work in with the birth of the prep bar,
Yes.
because I thought this was one of the most fascinating parts of your bio that really caught me, because I really am impressed as to how you got to this point. Take us to 2015, the year you founded the prep bar.
Mm-hmm.
What was happening in your life, and what specifically made you say it's time?
So at that time, let's roll it back to 2009 really quickly. So in 2009, I found myself in Georgia newly, right? I had only been here about maybe a year and a half. I had a 1-year-old child, and I had a son in high school, and I had to figure out how I was going to help in the household to make the ends do what the ends are trying to do. My husband at the time was an educator, a longtime educator, had just gotten his master's in special ed. You would think that he would just be like snapped up in Georgia because he was teaching in Brooklyn for 12 years or whatever. They would not give him the time of day because Georgia was off-letting teachers at that point because of the recession, right? So right around that time, they were deciding that classrooms, middle school classes could now have 40 kids and one teacher, and all of that. So it was just not a good time. And so my son was going to college. So I found myself involved with the Kaplan test prep situation. They came, they gave a practice test, and they invited the mayor at the time, Kasim Reed, would do like a college fair, right, at the Gold Dome in the Atlanta City Hall. And so I went up there to do the college fair and get his scores from his practice, all the things. While I was there, my 1-year-old is jumping around counting the squares in the marble squares that are in the floor in the foyer of the Atlanta City Hall. So the 1-year-old is down there and she's like 1, 2, and so the Kaplan people are like, is she counting? And so I'm like, yes, she absolutely is. Yes. And so they were amazed. So we started talking. And then I said, well, by the way, are you all looking for, teachers? And so they said, well, what we're looking for actually is proctors. And I said, oh, well, what's that? So we talked about that. They hired me on as a proctor. I got to drive all over Atlanta to go to wealthy people's homes and administer SATs and ACTs in their home for their students. So it was actually, so that's how I got to know the city, which was pretty cool. And then, long story short, a couple of years in, the organization decides that they want to start scaling back. I started teaching at that point. I had actually taken the test and gotten into the 90th percentile so I could teach. And so they had me in like classrooms. I would teach at Emory. I would teach at, Georgia Tech, all the different places. And then they started scaling back. And I had families that were like, their first child had been taught by me when I was with them. Their next child is coming up and they're like, well, what do you mean they're not doing this down here on the South Side anymore? And so they were calling me and they're like, are you available? Can you teach? And I was like, absolutely. So I started picking up students who, basically were being somewhat abandoned by the big box companies that I worked for. So as a result, the students that I worked with, the families that I worked with, there was an educational consultant that I started working with, and he started introducing me to entire cohorts of families from middle schools. And so from there, I said, you know what? I think I have something here. You know, I think I've got something, and let's make it official. So that's kind of how I decided to move forward and make it official. Hmm.
So, what gap did you see in the academic support landscape that convinced you something entirely new needed to exist?
So the gap that I saw was the lack of faith in our kids. So one, I would say, is the lack of faith in our kids. The second, I would actually kind of hone in on the lack of faith in our boys,
Mhm.
because the girls tended, nowadays a little bit different, but the girls tended to be the quieter ones. The girls tended to be the ones that followed the rules. The girls tended to be the ones that always got 4.0s and 3.5s and whatever.
Yeah.
Boys are not made that way, right? So I think God in his infinite wisdom understood that I should parent each gender, but not at the same time. So my kids are 15 years apart. So I was like steeped in being a boy mom. You know, I just everything boys. I understood boys. Let's go rough and tumble boys. And so so that being said, I understood the psychology of these boys. There you have them sitting, and then it's just antithetical what they do in Georgia versus or other whatever states versus what we were dealing with in New York. So instead of having like 7 40-minute classes, you have like a 40-minute lunch break. You can leave the building, go get pizza, come back, blah blah blah. Well, in Georgia, my poor child is in lockdown, right? There's 4 periods, so he's only taking the same 4 classes every day, 90 minutes per class, Monday through Friday. So I'm like, what in the world do you need 450 minutes a week to teach these kids? Like, what are we doing? So, and then 22 minutes for lunch. And then they can't leave, they can't do anything. Anyway, so I just was, it was, yeah, it was very different for me. I didn't even know things like that existed. so, so shame on me as a mom. But anyway, my point is that I understood why that was so difficult for boys because they're not meant to sit for those periods of time, and it's harder. Not nobody is really, but it's harder for boys. And I taught in the classroom many years later. So in like 2019 2020-ish, I went into the classroom and I was teaching social studies, high school social studies, and I started to really get into the understanding of keeping classroom management together, keeping the kids engaged, helping them to understand learning and life at the same time, were very important. And it's something that every teacher has to like dig deep to be able to do. You can't just sit there with the book and say, this is what the book says for whatever, for 40 minutes, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, because the kids aren't going to be there with you. So I think I have drifted at this point. However, my point is that going through the process of talking to the parents and feeling the pain of them not being able to get the resources that they thought they needed, especially because originally I was really working with SSAT students. So the SSAT is the test that you take to go to private high school. So yes, so I was working with the SSAT kids when I was doing my own thing initially, because these were the kids that were testing in to go away to private high school, private boarding, private day school, like the Woodwards and the Westminsters and like the Asheville schools and things like that. So, so these parents were like, "Oh no, my kid needs to get this, and they can't get it anywhere else." So that's how I ended up sealing the deal and starting the company officially back then. Um, yeah.
So let's talk about the name, the prep bar.
Mhm.
That name is specific and intentional. So what does it mean, and what was the feeling, and what feeling were you
Mhm.
trying to evoke with that?
So interestingly, I'm not going to claim any kind of originality. I was bandwagoning, I would say, on that one, because there at the time there were two things that were very popular. Three. So around that time, the whole what was it? Sex in the City-ish kind of thing was going on, and they started having this thing called dry bars, right? That mainly Caucasian women, but women would go, and the only thing they did in this salon was blow dry their hair, right, into whatever style. So there was the dry bars. Then there was a young sister that started doing financial literacy for young people in a mobile unit. So she used to drive around to neighborhoods in, I think, a retrofitted school bus, and she called it the fight. So then, of course, we also had my girl, whose name I can't remember, who had the lip bar, and I was like, you know what? I do prep. It's going to be the prep bar. So, the one thing I do is prep, and prep was broad enough, I felt, to encompass all the things that were important to me. Preparing young people, also preparing families. Also, I'm a prepper. So I also do just like not doomsday prepping, but I like to be prepared, having those extra few things. I have the solar panel, I have, all that stuff that you need just in case things go, whatever, a little bit left. So all of the preparation for life. Yes.
So when you think back to, not only was this name meaningful in its purpose, but in the previous question where you were talking about, the people that weren't, where you were helping them with resources and things of that nature, how were you able to intertwine that with your future clients about these resources in order to help fuel and ignite their enthusiasm, along with you building the prep bar at the same time?
Well, the main thing for me was results. And that's what no one's really paying me to be, I'm like, I got the big, what do I call it? The big auntie energy and all the things. The kids love me. I'm just a big kid myself. However, the truth is results, right? So if people's kids are getting into the schools, then that means that the person who's helping them must be doing the right thing. I've had students that took the test and they knew what school they wanted to go to, but they just couldn't get into the percentile they needed to get into. And I worked with them for like a couple weeks, and boom, they're now getting a full ride to Lawrenceville School. They're going to Church Farm School, things like that. So my students were getting the results. They were getting admitted. They were getting the scholarships. And so by referral, parents were like, she knows what she's doing. She's helping our kids to get into these schools. I was doing virtual tutoring. This wasn't the SSAT, but like ACT. And so I was doing virtual tutoring online back when it was Google Hangouts.
Yeah. Oh my God. The original OG
right there. Whoever was like OG in the comments. Yeah, the OG. So I was doing Google Hangouts with my book. So this, and so funny that of course I have a book right here. So this is like an old SAT book, but I would be with the book with the kids, like holding up the book.
Right. Wow.
And then, so what I would do is mail them a copy, and I would have a copy, and then we would go through the book together. And I had a whiteboard. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I had a little whiteboard, and I would do everything on the whiteboard and hold the whiteboard up, and they would follow along or do the examples on their whiteboard, and that's how we were tutoring. So I worked with kids in Connecticut, Pennsylvania. I worked with kids in boarding school who were getting ready to go to college and had to meet with me at like 7 a.m. Yeah. So it's about getting the kids to the next level.
When you were building a prep bar in the early days, what were your first steps, and how did you go from an idea to an actual operating business?
So that was not my first foray into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So I have been an entrepreneur. I won't call myself a serial entrepreneur, but I have this relationship with getting laid off, right? So so I feel as though the powers that be recognize that I was not going to be that, oh, she's getting her key from working 40 years. It's not going to be me. So I started off in corporate after college, and so I was in fashion. So worked. I was a trainee for the what was it called? Federated. So like the Macy's and Abraham and Styles and Dillard's and all that. So anyway, so I was an executive trainee for Federated. So that was my first actually my very first out of college. I was actually a copywriter at one of the top 5 ad agencies in the world. So it was an internship, unfortunately. And then when they offered me a position, but when I tell you that copywriters made no money back then, I was like, yeah, I can't really afford to live on that. So I'm just going to have to pass. So then I was the executive trainee, whatever. And then when I finished doing that, I started temping, and I ended up working for a British company, Alfred Dunhill of London, and I did fashion merchandising for 5 years. And that was a lot of fun. It was great. They flew me all over the world. I went to London a couple times a year. Hawaii, San Francisco, Seattle. Like they were flying me everywhere where we had stores, and I would teach the managers, because we didn't have Zooms and all that kind of thing. So I would go in and teach them and show them what SKUs are coming in and whatever, how to put their merchandise together and all those type of things. Then I got laid off. Surprise, right? So after that first layoff, I rolled into telecom. So I was in a telecom, I don't know, MLM, we'll call it, right? So I was doing network marketing with telecom. That was like, oh, okay, this is my own business. I'm not doing corporate anymore. They can lay you off, right? So I did that for like 5 years, and then ended up rolling back into corporate. So I temp again, and I started temping at the American Stock Exchange. And so at the American Stock Exchange, I started off in a little room, probably about the size of my office. And there were 6 of us in there. And do you know what our job was?
Well,
Our job was to correct the addresses of returned envelopes. So when we have like, every exchange has member firms, right? So the member firms, they have to pay bills and all the things. So the exchange would send off whatever, the billing, the materials, and they would get like, oh, it cannot be delivered, so they would send it back. And so the 6 of us, our job was to change the addresses on the envelopes and put them back in the mail. So I did that for a couple months, and then I eventually moved up into the marketing department for derivative securities. And then I started doing marketing for exchange traded funds. And I went and got my Series 7, my Series 63, my Series 6. And then they started flying me all over the country to teach lay people how to understand exchange traded funds like spiders, diamonds, and mid cap spiders and all that kind of stuff. And so I would teach like retirees, at like the Money Show and things like that, how to do the asset allocation models, right? For lay people. And then I got laid off after 9/11. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like, it's a cycle, right? So being an entrepreneur, my point is not new to me. At that point, I worked with a startup team for a publication. We started a magazine, and the magazine ran for a number of years. Unfortunately, one of our co-founders got cancer and passed away. And then everyone kind of, floated away after that. So then I ended up coming to Georgia. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting journey, that you're telling us about, because it's more than just your resilience that I'm seeing or I'm listening to. It's that wherewithal, and that you was not going to quit, and you were going to do what was necessary. So as you're building the prep bar at this point, what are the things that you decided in being a results-driven organization? What are some of the things that you implemented that you would make sure that the kids that came through the prep bar would be successful? What were some of those things?
So they definitely start off for me doing a character assessment. So all my students do a character assessment survey, and we go over the character assessment survey to see like, okay, this is what, and this is something that came along later. This came along once I became certified as a teen life coach, right? So I started to really understand the values, the character, and all of that, because it plays a role when you're when you're teaching younger kids. Then they are pulled out by their parents' desire, right? Their parent is like, you want to go to this school, then this is what you've got to get done. Or bribery, right? I had a student who was like, you get in the 90th percentile, I'm going to give you a nook. Do you remember those nooks back in the day?
Oh, yes.
So the fifth grader was like, I'm going to get in the 90th percentile so I can get a nook. And he sure enough did. And so it's a little different when you're doing younger kids, but when it's older kids in high school, they now have their own sense of motivation. And so you've got to figure out where that motivation is meeting them in their desire to go on to college, career, military, or whatever the case is. So we start off with a character assessment first, so they can understand like what the key parts of their own character, what it says about them. And then I question them, like, do you feel like it's really, did you pay attention on this quiz, or did you just mark anything, right? So when you get the answer, does that feel like that's how you operate in the world? And if that's your number one value, how do you show that in your work? How does that show up in this college that you chose? How does that show up in your work ethic, right? So we always start with the child, and we always start with the why, because that why, just like with entrepreneurs, there was like start with why. So the entrepreneurs start with why. It's the same type of thing. And that why that you get with the young people is what's going to carry them when they're having a rough day, when they can't understand a problem, when they are feeling defeated because their practice test didn't go as well as they thought it should. So it's important for them to actually ground themselves in a really good understanding of why they want to go to college, why they want to do this thing, because they're not about to embark on something that's easy. So,
just listening to that says what that says to me, and what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're giving an element that the schools are missing, where you're actually helping these kids to learn how to critically think. Is that true?
That is true. So, okay, I'm going to ask you a question that's going to be really weird, because it has nothing to do with the interview. I feel like I'm like, is my lighting like there's no light on the bottom, or can you see my face? Because I can't see. Okay, because I feel like I can't see my face, so that's why I'm like, let me fix it now, so at least we'll get a couple minutes of good lighting. All right,
clearly.
Okay, great. So what I would say is that the schools are not totally missing it. They are trying, or they tried with a couple of things that you really can't do on a large scale, and that's the problem. So let's look at SEL, right? So SEL is social emotional learning. So that's one of the things that was like a trigger word in the late like early 2000s, 2020-ish. Everyone's talking about SEL learning and social emotional development, and all this kind of stuff, which is very important, right? However, it's hard to individualize what each child needs when you have 35 kids.
Right.
So that's one of the things. So I would say that they're trying to do the right things, but they're trying too broad. The other thing that is one of my pet peeves is restorative justice. So
yes,
while I understand the need, because it's kind of like what happened with the election, right? We had an overcorrection, right? So when you say to yourself, the young people need to get a second chance, like these zero tolerance policies are not helpful, because you can't just look at a cause and then say this is what happened, when that kid has never done anything in the entire time that they've been in your school. They do one thing and then, zero tolerance, they're expelled. Hold on. However, at the same token, you can't have that kid that's getting into some ish every week and they're still at the school. You got to go, because you're getting into some ish every week, right? So
right.
if we can't, because ultimately teachers are tasked with teaching, right? And you can't be in an environment where there's one disruptive force, right? Whether it's the jokester or the belligerent kid that's always like taking you left in your lesson. And you're like, dude, I need you have a seat. Right. Yes. And if you, yeah, let me tell you, when I was in the classroom, I'd be like, sir, I have your father's number on speed dial. Do you understand me? Do you want me to call your father? Because I will. And then that would be the only thing that would calm him down, like sit down. So when you have the situation like that, you have to really look at how the schools are trying to honor your child and how they're harming the learning process in the attempt to honor the individual children, because that's not the space for it, because there are too many of them. So
yeah, so now as you say that, and again, I am a firm believer and supporter of what they're doing now with restorative justice. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you this as well, because I mean, this is something that I'm interpreting, and I definitely want to know if you know how you feel about this. But with restorative justice, it seems like it's an overcorrective thing as to what the system should be like anyway. Because what it sounds like, and the way I interpret from what I look at when I see school systems and students, is that the rules and the laws are folkways and mores. And so that depends upon who you are.
Right. It can't. Yeah. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge, because restorative justice is too, like you just said, you know what I mean? There's too many little wings of out. Like when you tell me that my child has to apologize, or somebody did something to my child, you're going to tell my child, oh, well, they apologized. They didn't mean it. So I don't like the apology. That's what we get. Like you're apologizing. I'm sorry. I don't see any real remorse. It's just right. But that's the first level on restorative justice, is the apology. Or they might have to write a letter, or they have to sit out lunch play. They can't play. They've got to sit on the side. Or whatever the things may be. So now when I say restorative justice, it's not like throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just feel as though there are too many places or stages where the kids are getting so many choices and options and chances that the culture of the school is suffering, the learning is suffering, the relationships, the educators themselves are literally suffering, right? Because they're like, I can't even discipline this child the way I know that they need to be disciplined, because the rule says that I can, but I know that child needs to be suspended, or I know that child needs to sit in the principal's office for 3 days during lunch. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not having lunch with your friends for 3 days, but you can't do that because, oh, you're separating them out, and oh, you're causing. I'm like, listen.
So there go the folkways and mores.
Right. So I mean, we're coming a far way. Like, in the Caribbean, I'm not far from people that were getting paddled. There's people I know in America who were getting paddled who are of my age group. So look, see what I'm saying? Like, no, listen, Brooklyn, they weren't putting no paddle to the people, but I know in some southern spots and church places and Catholic school, you were getting the paddle. So these kids, it's a lot. And so a conversation that definitely needs to be had is, where does the parental accountability come in?
See, OC, this is so wonderful, but so deep. But you see, they're taking the parental rights from the parents when they get to the school. The schools are the parents, that is at school and at home, because they are resourcing the kids with opportunities to disrespect the parents. So the parents really don't know what to do.
So I'm gonna give a little pushback, and I know so I'm gonna give a little pushback, right? So there's two reasons why it's a little tainted on the pushback. One, I taught in the classrooms. I taught at Christian schools, so
Okay.
since they were private schools, they were a little bit different on the rules, right? And you're getting a little bit more backup because we have chapel and we have all the things. But what I will say is, how do I say it? That's a little bit of a cop out for the parents
Well,
because,
mhm.
and I'm saying this as a person who my younger child is not even 20 yet. So I'm not like far removed. Like my child was in middle school during the pandemic. Okay. So,
Okay.
so that being said, I can tell you that there are parents that do not want the responsibility of parenting. I'm going to give you an idea. I'm in part of a parenting group that I'm in for just because I like to see what's going on with kids and whatever. And it's about parenting teenagers because teenagers, they ain't easy. However, the things I see in that group, my whole eyeball wants to be on the floor falling out. I'm like, what did you just say? So there was a situation where a mom was concerned about the extra social activities of her child, and she wasn't sure. And so she was asking, because the child is 16, and there were a swath of mothers that were like, you need to mind your business.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I need to. She is my business. I'm sorry. Are they not going to jail me if something happens to her? Like, let me not feed her for a week and see if they don't come for me. What do you mean, mind my business? My one business is that child. so, so you have mothers telling this mother of a 16-year-old who's asking a very valid question in a very respectful way that she needs to mind her own business. That's her daughter's business.
wow. See, now I do agree that there are parents like that, but
Hmm.
I don't think the mass number of parents are like that because a lot of people. I'm saying this right here tonight, where people can hear me. There are a lot of parents that should not be parents.
That's without question.
They should not be parents.
That's
I don't
without
know
question.
how they got to be parents, but that mistake was a serious mistake.
Well, okay, so this is what I will say. So it's not that I feel parents shouldn't be parents. This is what I feel. I feel that the accountability piece is missing. They will not let you drive a car without a license. But I've been saying this since the 90s when I tell you, but they will take a whole human being and wheel you to the front door of the hospital and say, good luck.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
understand. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there should be rules. There should be like somebody's got to, understand how things work. Like, you can't give your child dirty water. You shouldn't put your child's pacifier in your mouth because you might have gum disease that you're not going to give your kid. It's like,
Yeah.
like this little things like that. So I have a funny story. So I'm not going to act like it's a classist thing, but some people, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So one
Right.
day, my daughter, when she was little, come strolling up to me, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, her mouth is juicy. I'm like, she was like 2, 1.5, 2. And I'm like, what is in your mouth? Like, what you got going on? And she's like, Daddy, give me gum. Daddy, what? Daddy, give me gum. Daddy gave you gum. Give me that. So I go find her. I'm like, do you know this is a choking hazard? What are you doing? He was like, is it? Yes, you can't give a 1-year-old gum. What are you doing? So there's the people that just don't know, right? There's certain things we just don't know what we don't know. But then there's other things that we do know. And
Right.
when we get to the place of the things that we do know, there needs to be accountability. Like, you
Yes.
can't call your 4-year-old out of their name. Like, you can't curse at your 2-year-old. Like, you should not be, making 7-year-olds carry their 2-year-old sibling. Like, there's just like certain things that we understand that you can't leave your 6-year-old home alone. You
Right.
can't, you should not probably, although I'm the old lady on this one, you should probably not have your 7-year-old singing songs that have cussing all up and down them. How about that?
Ooh. Look, they learn the song.
Yes. So that knowing the song and singing the song is two different things. So when I was coming up, they didn't really have cussing in the music, so it wasn't really a thing. However, there was a time that I tried to do like the substitute cussing. You know, when you're like, what the heck? Oh,
Yes.
that wasn't gonna fly in my mama's house.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so you couldn't even like be in the neighborhood of the cuss word around your parent. And these folks are sitting there running around, the kids are singing, the cussing, they doing all the things, they fussing. You got people graduating with their PhDs, playing cussing music and jumping up and down like they just won. Like, you know, it's like the decorum, which has less to do with learning and more to do with socialization. I get it, and conditioning. But I personally miss those days.
Well, I'll tell you like this, it made me a better person. And believe me, I know what to do and what not to do, because that accountability, let me tell you something, that's everlasting and instilled in me, because I still know to this day. And I'll be 60 in September, but I know if I did something crazy and outlandish, the first person coming to my mind is my grandmother. I'm like, oh, now you know better.
Right. So we all know better. That's the thing. Like in the back, somebody has to have a better. There was a thread that I was watching of a group of teachers, and this one person who started this whole thread that was going through, I don't know, IG or somewhere, was talking about the fact that the church is part of the reason why kids are wild. Let me tell you why. Not because they're not praying or because they're not, understanding biblical teaching, but because of the fact that that was the one place that you got to go and sit down and be quiet. Right? So kids don't have a place to practice time and place when they're not actively going to church, because church had that function. You had the big mamas in the church. You knew you weren't going to be cussing in front of big mama. You knew that you need to be helpful. You know that you need to let the older people have a seat. You know that, they're cutting cake in the front. Don't you let yourself be up there trying to push no older people out the way to get the cake. So there's a time and place. Lower your voice. Understand when you enter the sanctuary, you're not chewing gum. You can't, all of these different things, they no longer learn that at school. And so they're not learning it in church because, church attendance is down. And then other than church attendance being down, we've got, the come as you are situation going on a lot in church. So it's not like when I was in church, like you had to go in and be quiet and sit down and, all the things. So it's not necessarily that, right? However, that third place, they call it the third place, that third place is missing. So thank God for things like, cotillions that still happen, for things like whatever, there's Kappa League or the Pearl Girls, or these things that come from community organizations or Divine Nine organizations that try and rally the youth together to teach them as well how to be in the world. And so we have to give thanks for that, but definitely I think there's a deficit of accountability for not letting anything and everything just go. People have this laissez-faire attitude, which you can have with certain things, but you can't have that with parenting, because you're putting a whole person out into the world. And it's not that you're raising someone that's mean or rude. One, a lot of times they don't know any better, right? And then two, you're putting them out there at a disservice, because people need to remember that as a community, we in this nation represent a scant 13% of the human population. So that means that they have to be able to reflectively interact, I guess is the best way to say, with other cultures, with other people, with other folks. You have to understand that, yes, bringing your whole self to work is wonderful. However, sometimes bringing your whole self to work is insufficient. There's people that want to call like everything is racism. And yes, racism is huge and large and big. And we see what happened with the Voting Rights Act, and we see what's going on with cracking these districts and all the things. However, sometimes you just wrong. Sometimes you're not racist. Sometimes you're just wrong. Sometimes you just can't wear shorts to a job interview. Sometimes you just can't, I mean, really, you can't be in a Zoom interview and your significant other is rolling up a blunt behind you. Like, you can't, this thing, and then you're going to say, oh, of course they didn't hire me, they racist. No, sometimes you're just wrong. Right? So we need to set people up to like understand the norms so they can decide which ones they want to abide by, which ones they don't. But if they don't even know it's a norm, you setting them up to fail.
You know, I got to tell you, see, this is one of those great interviews that that I really need to make sure that, and I hope that an enormous amount of people, you know, watch this more than one time, because you just mentioned some things that, you know, we try to preach and hope to do here on this platform. That is to be informative, you know, besides the motivation and inspiration, but being informative, because there are a lot of people that are still roaming today, you know, on that premise of what you just spoke of, that just think like, okay, well, if this don't happen to me, this is why. That's not true. That's not true.
Right.
But that takes away from the main mission. You know, when people try to be informative and build a community. And
Right.
see, this is why we have to toe the lines with like several things. There's so many you can't cover. But you have to toe the line,
Right.
because what we're trying to do is we want to make sure that we make everybody better. And see, you just made a very valid point, though. I want to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you just said something that I want to jump in on, which is towing the line. So one of the things that I always say is that we have to roll as a squad. So if you watch football, right, you understand everybody can't be the quarterback, right?
Exactly.
So every position is necessary in order for your team to win. So you've just got to pick your position and play it to the fullest of your ability. Yes. Everybody's not going to be the motivational speaker. Everyone's not going to be the person that bakes the pies. Everybody's not going to be the one that, you know, gets to carry the defensive whatever things to defend and serve. Everyone's not going to be able to do all the things, right? So, but pick your position and decide that you're going to play it to the fullest extent. And so in my walk, I know that my golden thread of my life is education. So whether I'm teaching people how to test or how to think, I do a whole series with brain science and understanding the neurology of how your brain works so that you can recognize how much control you have over things like your thoughts and your thoughts that are creating your everyday habits and your feelings and your moods, and how to like decide what state you're going to be in so that you don't allow those feelings to stop you from getting to your goal and things like that. That all comes together when I'm working with young people or adults even. However, we've got another thread, right? We've got the community thread. So now it's not just the young people and the coaching and them getting to college, because they don't all want to go to college. We have to be really aware of the fact that the times that we're in right now do not require everyone to get a college degree. However, I feel like college is important because I feel like it's that next level of like getting to know yourself, right? Getting to, you know, to be in the protective space while you're figuring out adulting, right? That's, I used to call it, for my son, I called it the covering. So when he was like in high school, he was like, I'm done with school. 12 years is enough. I'm finished. And so I'm like, really, that's fine if you feel like you want to be out in the world right now. But if you would like to extend your protective covering of your parents, then I suggest you take yourself on to college. Because if you're not in college, you're not going to be in here, right? So,
okay, I'll put you on that.
I mean, you know, that's it. You know, I can be done now, or I can be done in 4 years. You get 4 more years, and if you finish, get your degree and go on out into the world. So So that part of it is very important when we're sitting down talking to young people community wise, right? So when you're talking about community, so I'm also involved in community building for the times such as these, right? So I didn't even really get to even touch on AI yet. So I'm going to jump in with AI really quickly, and I'm going to swing into something else, and then I'm going to let you, have the balance. So with regard to AI, one of the challenges that we have as parents and educators as well is embracing the importance of AI, understanding it's here, right? But at the same token, not giving way to it and saying, I don't have to learn anything.
Right.
When AI first came out, when I was in the classroom, the kids were like, oh, Miss Flemming, you know about Chatty? Yes, I know. And I'm reading and I understand that you didn't write this. So I would be in class, I taught English, and I would say, write blah, 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 XYZ. And they would like come back with these papers. And I'm like, you did not write that. How do you know? I've been teaching you since August. It's December. I know what you write like. You don't write like that. Right. So then, they all thought they were getting over like, oh, she doesn't know what Chat GPT is. Let me go on ahead and get this out, whatever. So when I taught, the kids loved and hated me, right? Because of the fact that even before Chat GPT was a thing, I understood the importance of writing. So just the neurological effect of having a pen in your hand and writing, it affects how you learn, it affects what you remember, it affects how you synthesize the information, right? How you note taking, all the things. So I used to have my kids come in, and on the board every day, I don't know if you remember back in the day, there was a do now. So I used to have a prompt, and this is before like even AI prompting and all the things, but I would have a prompt and I would say to the kids, you've got to write 5 sentences to that prompt. And they had to do it every day on paper because every other class they were in, they only used computers. And I was like, no, we're going to use paper and pen here. Well, I don't have a notebook. That's all right. I bought notebooks for everybody, but I don't have a pen. I used to bring pens in every week. I had a fresh box of pens. Miss Flemming, can you have a pen? Miss Flemming, do you have a pen? So how do you come to school with no pen? Come on. So I was teaching them to access their own curiosity, creativity, and so forth prior to giving it away to Google or AI, right? So before there was AI, there was Google. They would Google everything. And I'm like, I said, listen, Google has an answer for everything. So when you sit there and say, oh no, because Google said, Google will give you an answer, but are you asking the right question? So powerful people ask powerful questions. I will always remember that. That's a quote from Trevor Otts. And so powerful people ask powerful questions. How powerful is the question you're asking? You're asking a ridiculous question, and then you're trying to throw me the ridiculous answer that came out of Google. Same with AI. So now what we've got is we have to teach young people how to master the AI and master the intersection of where they end and where the AI can tag it off. Like you can tag off the AI once you've done your own deep diving. Once you've brought out your own things that you're talking about, that you're looking about, that you want to let it understand your voice or all these different things, then you can tag off to AI and say, all right, did I ask all the right questions? Is there anything in here that you think I should ask that I didn't? All of those type of things, that's what the AI is for. It's not to write your paper. It's not to do your work. It is there to help you. My big thing is not having kids outsource their critical thinking to AI. So that's something that I'm working on. I'm doing some programming over the summer. So for your listeners, if they would like to find me, they can find me, and then therefore they can get some information about how to move forward in learning what I'm doing in the summertime with kids and AI. So again, my company's The Prep Bar. So it's theprepbar.com. I've got to do my shameless plug. And then my last thing, because we're cutting down on time, is that right now in this next phase of my life, I have kind of taken a round robin back to something that I've been passionate about throughout my living, which is gardening and self-sufficiency and food. Because not only do our kids have to be able to perform in the world, our families have to be able to sustain themselves. And right now we see with the pricing and the shortages that are being projected and the farmers having less fertilizer, planting less crops, all of that sort of thing, we need to also, and just the rising of the prices, we need to be prepared. My mom is one of 10. And people always say in days and times like that, how did your mom, how'd your grandmother raise 10 kids? Because my grandmother didn't have 10 kids going to McDonald's, right? You go to McDonald's with 2 kids and it's $50. So can you imagine if you had 10? So they had I'm from country, right? So, well, I'm not, but my mom grew up in what they call country. So, and my dad. So farming, tilling, doing all of that thing. My grandmother, they planted, they had some small livestock and things like that so that they can feed 10 kids, right? Because you're growing your potatoes and your bananas and your, whatever have you. So, so we as a people have to get back to understanding our role with the soil and the earth. And so I'm also doing work with that through an organization called National North American Food and Farm. So so I've got a little bit of all of that happening, also in line with preparation, the prep bar. But I am very, very, very happy and fortunate to be helping families with food planning, food system planning, garden planning, and things of that nature as well, so that we can keep our families moving forward, regardless of what the future, even if it's short term, holds.
So, is there what are your words of wisdom and encouragement that you like to leave with our audience? And again, tell them how to connect with you via your social media, your website, all of those good things.
Okay, sure. So my name is, we'll start with connection. So my name is Odette Flemming, which you see in the lower third there. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And you can find me on social media, on Facebook at The Prep Bar, which is facebook.com/The Prep Bar. And then I don't really do IG so much. However, with regard to, let's see, what did you do? Oh, and my website. There we are. So if you want to find me, my website is theprepbar.com. That's the easiest way to find me. You can send me a message. And you can also make an appointment to speak with me about your teenager. You can also go ahead and complete an intake form, and I'll reach out to you so that we can discuss what your child needs for the next phase of their life, whether it is their junior or a senior. They could even be a senior getting ready for freshman year. I'm doing a college AI toolkit workshop this summer to get our seniors prepared for college, because college and AI is a wild, wild west out there. Most high schools aren't letting kids use it. So there's like a kind of a space in the middle where kids are not really sure how to or when to utilize AI for college success. And with regard to NAF2, which is the North American Food and Farm, you can find me on Facebook at the NAF2 Nation is our group. So NAF like Frank, number 2 Nation. So there we have all the ways, I believe, to reach me. And so, words of wisdom. Okay, so I will leave the people with this. We are all given the same number of minutes, seconds, hours, days, or in a day. So we've got to understand that we have to use our agency to use that time to our best ability and for our highest and best for our community. So we've got to get engaged, get involved, understand the things that make a difference, make sure we're utilizing our voices for voting, utilizing our voices with our children, teaching our next generation how important their voices are, as well as teaching our families how important it is to create a system for themselves, for their longevity, and for their prosperity.
So I'm going to close with a monologue, but before I do that, once I close, do you have a couple of minutes after I close the show?
Absolutely.
All right. So for those of you that are watching on all of our channels, especially our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed, I ask if you would please support us by subscribing to the channel, enabling all notifications, where you will be able to get all of the shows live when we first start. You're able to go back and watch all of our previous recorded shows and learn from all of our professionals that are doing work to help to build our communities around this country. So in closing, you know, there are conversations that entertain you, and then there are conversations that change you. Tonight was the second kind. Mrs. Odette Flemming, on behalf of America in Black and White, on behalf of every parent, every student, every educator watching tonight, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for your vision you carry and the work you refuse to put down. What I want to sit with as we close this episode is something Odette said about self-doubt, about how the battle for a young person's future is often won or lost in their own mind before a test is ever taken, before an application is ever submitted, before a dream is ever pursued. That struck me because she is not just a coach, she's a demolition expert. She tears down the internal walls that keep young people small, and when she hands them a blueprint for something larger than they imagine, over $2.8 million in scholarship dollars. That is not a number, that is a life times thousands. And I cannot leave tonight without drawing the thread that began this episode back to where it started. We open with the story of Katherine Johnson, a woman who computed trajectories that put men on the moon, whose precious and preparation made the impossible possible. Tonight, Odette Flemming is doing the same kind of work, not as a NASA chalkboard, but in coaching sessions, in tutoring rooms, in academia, unlimited classrooms across Atlanta and beyond. Both women are computing trajectories. Both women are pointing young people, young Black people, young people of every background toward a destination worth reaching. If tonight's conversation moved you, I want you to go find Odette. Visit her at www.theprepbar.com or call 877-360-7737. Share this episode with a parent. Share it with a teenager. Share it with a teacher who needs to be reminded what real advocacy looks like. And if this show has meant something to you, if it has informed you, uplifted you, challenged you, reminded you of who we are and what we are capable of, then do your part. Like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share it, because the conversation does not stop when the camera cuts off. It continues in your home, your car, your community. I'm your host, Charles Zachary King. This has been an America in Black and White Season 4, Episode 71. We're not just telling stories, we are preserving a legacy. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and remember, in Black and White, the truth has never been clearer. We will see you guys tomorrow night. Have a great evening. And again, thank you.